The notification hit Tony's private server at exactly 3 a.m. It wasn't an Avengers alert or an alien invasion. It was a liquidation notice. Stark Industries and LexCorp had been deadlocked over the global grid contract for months. But Lex Luthor just pulled the trigger on a hostile takeover that makes Wall Street weep. This isn't just about money. It's about who controls the power switch for the entire planet. Today, we're running the ultimate simulation. Can the man who built a suit in a cave survive against the man who hunts Kryptonians for sport? Let's check the bank accounts. Phase 1. The War of Wallets. Net worth and resource acquisition. Let's analyze the raw financial power on the table. Forbes usually pegs Tony Stark's net worth around $100 billion. That's impressive. But Lex Luthor isn't just a CEO. The man is a sovereign economy. While Stark ties the majority of his wealth to stocks and public perception, Luthor operates with liquid assets that arguably rival the GDP of medium-sized nations. If this war stays strictly in the boardroom, Tony is already bleeding out. You have to look at liquidity and acquisition. When Stark needs to build a Hulkbuster, he usually needs board approval or a complex shell company. When Luthor builds a Warsuit, he just writes a personal check. The science of corporate warfare here is brutal, and it starts with supply chain strangulation. Stark's tech relies heavily on rare earth metals, palladium, gold titanium alloys, and synthesized vibranium. These are terrestrial resources with finite global supply lines that can be bought, blocked, or bombed. Luthor plays a completely different game. His portfolio is built on xenotech, alien technology reverse engineered from Kryptonian debris and Brainiac probes. He holds the patents on energy sources that don't technically exist on the periodic table. In our simulation, Luthor makes the first move. He doesn't fire a missile. He buys the exclusive rights to the semiconductor foundry in Taiwan that produces Stark's advanced targeting chips. Overnight, Stark's supply chain freezes solid. Now, look at the logistics. Stark is an engineer. He solves problems with invention. Luthor is a strategist. He solves problems with acquisition. Real-world corporate sabotage suggests Luthor would flood the market with cheap, dangerous knockoffs of arc reactor tech, burying Stark in legal battles and federal recalls. Tony's time is suddenly split between the lab and the courtroom. But here's the twist. Stark has survived being stripped of his company before. He thrives in the garage. When Luthor cuts the chip supply, Tony doesn't panic. He cannibalizes old suits. He creates a proprietary operating system that doesn't need the blocked hardware. The science of Stark's survival is adaptability. Luthor assumes cutting the money cuts the power. But Tony Stark built a Mark I from scrap metal while dying. So, what are the odds here? We're looking at the survival metric of financial solvency and logistics. Luthor has the raw capital to buy the battlefield before the war starts. He has fewer moral lines regarding funding, often dipping into criminal enterprises to fund his R&D. However, Stark's resilience is statistically anomalous. He turns resource scarcity into innovation. In this first phase, Stark takes a massive hit. His public image crumbles, his stock price tanks, and he loses manufacturing speed, forcing him to rely on what he already has in the tower. But he isn't out. He secures his personal assets, isolates the Avengers funding, and goes dark. Iron Man survival odds, Tier A. He's bruised, his credit is frozen, and he's operating on a shoestring budget relative to LexCorp. But you can't bankrupt a man who can print his own energy. The money war ends in a stalemate. But it pushes Tony into a corner. And a cornered Stark is dangerous. Luthor knows this. That's why he stops attacking the wallet and starts attacking the code. Phase 2. Zeros and ones, the cyber warfare siege. With the financial markets deadlocked and Stark's supply lines strangled, the battlefield shifts instantly from Wall Street to the server room. You see, money takes days to move. Data moves at the speed of light. Luthor initiates a massive cyberkinetic siege on the Stark grid. And this isn't some script kiddie intrusion. We need to look at the AI disparity here. Tony utilizes Friday or Jarvis, systems built on intuition, adaptability, and human-like heuristics. They are brilliant, but they are fundamentally human-mimicking code designed to assist a pilot. Luthor's code is different. In many comic iterations, he has reverse-engineered logic gates from Brainiac, a 12th-level intellect Colulan cyborg. This is like a pocket calculator trying to outmath a quantum supercomputer. The attack begins with a barrage of zero-day exploits. For those who don't know, a zero-day is a software vulnerability that the vendor, in this case Tony, doesn't know exists yet. Luthor has likely been stockpiling these flaws for years, waiting for this exact moment. He doesn't just try to guess a password. He floods the network with thousands of simultaneous breach protocols designed to overload the suit's logical processors. Now, the standard defense here is air gapping, physically disconnecting the suit from the internet. But here is the fatal flaw in Iron Man's modern design: utility. To function at peak efficiency, the bleeding edge or model prime suits need to talk to satellites for GPS, weather data, and threat assessment. That open channel is all Luthor needs. Let's break down the reality of this hack. It's not about typing speed, it's about latency. Luthor's attack script executes in nanoseconds. Tony's brain processes the warning signal in roughly 13 milliseconds. In cyberwarfare, that gap is an eternity. Every cycle Friday spends defending the firewall is a cycle not spent on flight stabilization. In our scenario, the HUD inside the helmet flickers. It's not a dramatic countdown, it's a sudden, sickening freeze. The repulsors whine and die. The arc reactor dims. For exactly 30 seconds, Tony Stark is just a man trapped in a distinctly heavy metal coffin. This is the backdoor problem. If Luthor bought the chip manufacturers in Phase 1, he likely embedded hardware-level Trojans that software patches can't fix. The suit's OS is compromised at the silicon level. Stark survives this, not through coding superior to Luthor's, but through paranoia. He initiates a manual analog override, a literal mechanical latch that dumps the OS and reboots the suit into safe mode. He flushes the system, isolating the infected subroutines, but the damage is done. He loses his long-range comms, his satellite link, and his predictive algorithms. We have to look at the survival metric: system control and information security. This was close. While Stark is a genius engineer, Luthor is a hacker who regularly compromises alien motherboards. Stark is lucky his life support didn't just switch off. Iron Man's survival odds? Tier C. He makes it through, but he's blind, deaf to the outside world, and running on local sensors only. The sleek, connected superhero is gone. Now he's operating in the dark, and that is exactly where Luthor wants him for the physical escalation. The digital shield is down. Now the real metal has to bleed. Phase 3, the first engagement: drones versus sentries. The silence following the cyber attack doesn't last. With Stark's long-range sensors offline and his suit running on a localized backup OS, he doesn't see him coming until they break the sound barrier over Manhattan. This is the physical escalation. Luthor knows Stark is blind, so he launches a suppression wave, a legion of automated, unmanned warsuit drones. These aren't the bulky green power suits Luthor wears personally. These are streamlined, mass-produced hunter killers designed for one thing: overwhelming volume. When we analyze the physics of swarm combat, the math gets terrifying for a solo operator. It's not just about 50 robots versus one man. It's about shared processing power. A drone swarm operates like a hive mind. If one drone sees Tony, they all see him. They share target acquisition data instantaneously, triangulating his position from 50 different angles to create a firing solution that is statistically impossible to dodge. In military terms, this creates a kill box with 0 exit vectors. Stark launches from the balcony to intercept, but he's immediately fighting against biology. Let's talk about reaction time. The average human visual reaction time is roughly 200 milliseconds. Even with the extremis virus or neural interfaces, Tony Stark is still limited by how fast his brain can process a threat and tell his fingers to move or his suit to thrash. Luthor's drones, they are hardwired. Their sensor-to-trigger latency is sub-millisecond. Before Tony's brain even registers the flash of a muzzle, the drones have already calculated his trajectory, fired, and adjusted for wind resistance. The weaponry exchange here is fascinating from an engineering standpoint. Stark's repulsors are generally classified as high-density muon beams or plasma charges. They deliver massive kinetic impact and heat. Great for punching holes in titanium. But Luthor's drones are firing focused energy beams derived from his kryptonite research. Even if Tony isn't Superman, directed radiation weapons are a nightmare for electronics. Every hit doesn't just damage the armor plating, it ionizes the air and creates electromagnetic interference that scrambles Stark's already compromised sensors. The battle over the city becomes a game of energy management. Stark is in safe mode. Remember, he doesn't have the cloud-based aim assist helping him track 50 targets. He is aiming manually. He has to rely on wide dispersal weapons, micro-missiles, unibeam sweeps, and lasers. But these high-output attacks drain the arc reactor rapidly. Then comes the variable Luthor counted on, the hero tax. The drones don't care about collateral damage. They fire through office buildings to get to Stark. They drop debris on crowded streets. Tony is forced to break engagement to catch falling elevators and shield civilians from falling glass. Every second he spends playing firefighter is a second the swarm uses to flank him. He's catching cars with one hand and blasting drones with the other, spiking his suit's thermal levels into the red. This is where Stark's experience shines. He realizes he can't outshoot the swarm, so he outflies them. The Iron Man suit has a superior thrust-to-weight ratio compared to Luthor's heavier, tank-like drones. Tony drags the swarm into a vertical climb, pushing into the upper atmosphere where the air gets thin. The drones, designed for urban suppression, start to stall as their control surfaces lose grip. Stark, using thrusters, cuts his engines, flips backwards, and unleashes a single, devastating unibeam blast that chains through the tightly packed formation. It works, but the cost is astronomical. His suit is scorched, his ammunition is depleted, and his reactor is running at 40% capacity. Cleared the board, but he burned half his fuel doing it. We have to calculate the survival metric: energy efficiency and maneuverability. Stark wins on agility. The Iron Man chassis is simply a better flying machine than anything LexCorp mass produces. But in terms of energy economy, this was a disaster. Luthor traded cheap drones for Stark's precious reactor output. Iron Man's survival odds? Tier B. He survives the swarm because he's a better pilot and his platform is deeper in terms of versatility. But he is now tired, his suit is damaged, and his power reserves are critically low. And he hadn't even seen the boss yet. Luthor was just softening him up. Now the real heavy metal steps onto the field. Phase 4, the final confrontation. God Killer versus Man of Iron. With the drone swarm reduced to smoke and scrap metal, Tony tracks the guidance signal to a private launch pad on the outskirts of Metropolis. There is no stealth here, no clever quips. Lex Luthor is waiting. He steps out in the Warsuit, a hulking green and purple monstrosity that makes the Hulkbuster look like a toy. This is the moment the simulation shifts from a tactical shooter to a boss battle against a raid boss. We need to break down the heavy hitters. Stark is wearing the Bleeding Edge or Model Prime armor. It is a masterpiece of nanotechnology, capable of reshaping itself instantly to form shields, blades, or thrusters. It is versatile, regenerative, and fluid, but Luthor's Warsuit is built on a completely different philosophy. It is a tank. It's designed to take a punch from a Kryptonian who can move tectonic plates. Let's analyze the structural integrity and the physics of this mismatch. When Iron Man fights Thanos, he struggles to survive a single direct hit. The Warsuit is engineered to survive sustained combat with Superman. If Lex lands a clean hit on Tony, we have to talk about G-forces. Even if the nanotech armor holds together and doesn't shatter, the kinetic energy transfer is lethal. Newton's laws still apply. If a fist the size of a microwave hits you with enough force to shatter a mountain, the sudden acceleration turns the human brain into jelly inside the skull. Stark relies on inertial dampeners, but against Luthor's hydraulic kryptonite-powered servos, those dampeners are pushed past their failure point. Then there's the thermodynamics check. Lex's primary weapon isn't just blunt force, it's energy projection. His suit is powered by a kryptonite reactor, which emits massive amounts of ionizing radiation. Stark's nanites are sensitive to extreme heat. As the fight drags on, Stark's suit struggles to dissipate the thermal load. He is literally cooking inside the can. Every time he blocks a blast, his internal temperature spikes, and the nanites lose cohesion, unable to reform fast enough to cover the gaps. The tactical mismatch is the final nail. Stark fights to disable. He targets weapon systems and joints. Luthor fights to kill. He aims for the cockpit. In our narrative beat, the difference in philosophy becomes fatal. Stark attempts a surgical strike to disable Lex's flight stabilizers. Lex ignores the damage, grabs Stark midair, and slams him into the pavement with enough force to register on local seismographs. Luthor stands over him and activates a shimmering green force field. This isn't a standard shield. It's a gravity well designed to crush diamonds. Tony is pinned. His HUD screams warnings. Structural integrity drops to 15%. He can't shoot his way out because the field absorbs energy. He's trapped in a vise, and Luthor is tightening the screw. Tony has one card left, the Hail Mary. He realizes he can't win the physical fight. He has to win the engineering fight. He commands the nanites to detach from his limbs, exposing his own body to the crushing pressure. The nanites swarm into the Warsuit's joints, not to break them, but to bridge the connection between Lex's reactor and the chassis. Tony triggers a localized EMP by overloading his own arc reactor. The resulting explosion is blinding. It fries the Warsuit's neural link instantly. It also completely deadlines Iron Man's suit. We have to look at the survival metric, structural integrity, and lethality. Iron Man's survival odds, tier D. In a straight brawl, this is a nightmare scenario. Lex's suit is designed to kill a god. Tony is fighting uphill against superior durability and a total lack of moral restraint. He survives only by sacrificing his greatest weapon to destroy Luthor's. The aftermath. The smoke clears over the launch pad. Both suits are fused heaps of slag. Tony Stark drags himself out of the rubble, coughing, while Luthor is trapped inside his frozen armor, furious but immobilized. The final verdict? Stark wins on versatility and quick thinking, but Luthor dominates in raw power and preparation. If this simulation runs 10 times, Stark barely walks away from 4 of them. Final tier calculation. Overall survival probability is roughly 40%. Which corporate war do you want to see simulated next? Wayne Enterprises versus Oscorp? Let us know in the comments below.